this Sunday's gospel, we see Jesus cleansing the temple. In a lot of ways, this is a hard passage to comment on because Jesus is showing anger. So we'll get to that in a second. But what's going on in this passage here? We've got Jesus cleansing the temple. He's chasing out the money changers and the animals and all this sort of stuff, and it causes us to reflect a little bit on, like, what is the purpose of a church building, or in Jesus' case, the temple, right? Because what he's doing, these guys who are selling animals and changing money and all this sort of stuff, they're actually serving a purpose. They're making things a little bit more efficient. If you had to go to the temple to offer a sacrifice of a sheep, and you had a 4-day journey to get there, you can bring a sheep with you for 4 days, and good luck keeping it alive, keeping it with you, and all that stuff. Or you could just buy one there and sacrifice it. And that's a whole lot easier. So these guys are serving a purpose in the temple, but the focus had become more about them and their money changing and selling sheep and all this sort of stuff, and less about encountering God in the temple, which is what the temple is for. And so it begs the question of us, of our church buildings. What do we expect of our churches? Do we want them to be entertaining to us? Do we want them to be entertaining to our children? Or does everything about the church, is it all supposed to be facilitating this encounter with God? Everything from those pamphlets and booklets in the back of the church for our kiddos, to the hymnals, to the worship aids, to the style of music, all that sort of stuff that we sometimes get hung up on. At the end of the day, is it more about facilitating an encounter with God, or is it more about my preferences and my conveniences? Because it's got to be about God before it's about me. That's what a church is for. All right, so Jesus cleanses the temple to kind of bring this to our attention. What do we do about Jesus' anger? A lot of people they'll want to stay away from this passage because it's a difficult one to talk about. I think it's brilliant for family life, right? Jesus shows us our emotions, our feelings, those things that just kind of well up inside of us, are not in and of themselves good or bad. It's what we do with them. Jesus felt anger and he acted on it. And Jesus never sinned, which means this is not a sinful action. So there's something instructive there for us. What do we do with our emotions? In my household, we'll often have conversations about, it's okay that you felt that thing or felt that way. This was an inappropriate way to express that or to deal with that. And maybe this would be better, right? The emotion itself is neither good nor bad. It's what we do with it as adults too, right? So whether you're angry, you're frustrated, you're sad, you're happy, what you do with that is what matters. The feeling isn't good or bad, it's just a feeling, right? And so Jesus shows us you can feel something like anger and act on it in a virtuous way. Right? He's cleansing the temple. He's making sure that we get the priority right in the temple. And he shows us that he doesn't just have this knee-jerk emotional reaction. He doesn't just feel anger and snap and start flipping tables and chasing people out. It's the gospel says he created a whip, and then he chased them out. He needed a whip to get the animals out of there, right? So Jesus feels anger. He thinks about the situation. He pauses to make a whip, and then he goes and acts on it. He doesn't just snap and start throwing stuff. Right? He feels a feeling, he figures out what to do with it, and then he does it. That's how we need to respond to our anger as well, and our frustrations as well. Third interesting point about this for us for this week is it invites us to consider Jesus got so upset about a gross injustice that he did something about it. What causes a righteous anger in us, and what are you going to do about it? Our kids especially have this innate ability, this innate sense of justice. Sometimes it's a little bit off, right? But they have this innate sense of this isn't fair. And a lot of those things aren't fair. So it's worth spending some time as a family to talk about, number one, how do we approach the church building? Is it about facilitating an encounter with God, or is it more about me? Number two, how do we handle emotions in our household and in our lives? And then number three, what frustrates us about the world around us? And more importantly, what are we going to do about it?